Here we go. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Black History class, week 2 here at Second Baptist Church, a house of hope. We're so glad that you are with us here in the room, as well as those who are joining us online, and I'm sure we'll have more joining us. It is a frigid night, but God is still good and gracious, and we're grateful for His mercy and for His goodness. I'm Pastor Todd Johnson. For those of you who are watching, if you watch Second Baptist, you know who we are. We're here in the Undercroft in the basement of our church where we're holding weekly classes, not just in the month of February, but beyond. We're looking to go at least 7 to 8 weeks in this first series to be, break the mold of what we normally do when it comes to teaching our Black history, which is going beyond Black History Month, because we say Black history is all year endeavor, but we have to be intentional to do it. I want to thank our own Pastor Pierre Osborne, who is spearheading this effort and gathering this class and curriculum, and our teacher tonight, Leah Dotson, another member of Second Baptist Church, and I'm so excited about what she's going to talk about. I want to make a comment about that before she gets up. But let's open up with a word of prayer, make a couple of announcements, and then we'll jump right into our lesson. Father, we thank you, we bless you, we honor you for the privilege of gathering, that we might obtain knowledge and build our awareness of Black history and legacy, the heritage of a people who have been an integral part of the fabric of this nation and beyond the history of this nation, of the entire world. We thank you that your grace and mercy is interwoven in the experience of colored folk from the dark days of slavery, but beyond that, before that, far, far, far before that, you have been with us and you're with us today. Lord, we ask that you would continue to broaden our minds and open up our hearts, that we might embrace these parts of our history and perhaps learn something new that we have not known before. And for your goodness and for your mercy, we thank you, even for the snacks and the meal and the refreshments that we have. We ask that you bless it and make it nourishing to our bodies. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. Well, thank you guys for being with us and coming out. Want to say a couple of things. Again, these classes are made available here at Second Baptist Church every Monday night at 6:30. For the next 2 months or so, we'll be here, and you're more than welcome, if you haven't come tonight, to join us. We do have refreshments, and I think we have sandwiches and chips and water for you, so please, if you could, discreetly or quietly, make your way and grab something sometime during the days so that we can make sure we all get a little something in our stomachs. And those of you who are at home, sorry we can't feed you through the phone, but you can carry your phone to your kitchen and make yourself something. If you're watching, you're more than welcome to engage and ask questions or make comments. We always ask that you seek to be respectful, understand that though this is not a church service, it is still a church-sponsored endeavor, and we can't promise that our presenters will be able to respond to all of our online questions, but I'm sure that she'll glance and we'll look at it afterwards even to see if there's anything that we might find suitable to respond to. I want to make note of a couple of things that are happening in our community that might be of interest to you. Tonight and tomorrow, there is a special Black History program sponsored by the Warren Heritage Center that deals with the flag, the fight, and the future, a discussion with African American veterans from Warren. And so that is happening tonight. It's actually going on right now at the Veterans Administration on East Market Street. But if you're tuned into this or you didn't make plans to get there, or you're here in this class tonight, you're not out of luck, because it is a 2-night event, and tomorrow night they'll be doing it again, listening to a panel of 7 Black veterans, or those who have served in the military. And tomorrow night, one of our own members, Reverend, I keep calling people different things today, Brother Andre Clark, will be a part of the panel. And I'm really proud that they're doing this, because as you all know, Second Baptist has made an effort to acknowledge Black veterans through the restoration project of our chapel. And we are working on a memorial and acknowledgement area outside. And I had a really exciting conversation with the individuals who are working on that project, because they had the same idea. And I said, well, why don't we put our heads together, since we're already halfway there? And so we'll hopefully be talking out some things that can help bring that a reality on our chapel property. I also want to make a first-time announcement This is an exclusive announcement that hasn't even gone out yet. But next Friday, February 28th at 2 p.m., I will be hosting and sponsoring a special plaque unveiling ceremony at the Warren Fire Department, the Central Fire Station downtown, in honor of Brother Robert Saffold, or as we call him, Brother Bob Saffold, who was Warren's first black firefighter. According to the chief, he began his service in 1962, and it was not an easy road for him. And though he's received commendations and proclamations before, we felt it appropriate that he would be formally recognized in the police station with a permanent plaque. And that will be next Friday, the 28th at 2 p.m. So you're welcome to come and join us. I'm sure we'll take a video or go live or something like that. But when we have living legends and heroes among us, we want to make sure that they're acknowledged. We ought to give folks their flowers while they're still with us and not wait until their time has passed. Tonight, our presenter is Leah Dotson, and she's talking tonight about the power of radical joy. And I want you to know, Leah, that you have helped me. I was going to talk about something else, and if the Lord says the same, this Sunday I was going to talk about black joy because it's not something we don't talk about enough. And even in my prayer, to be honest, because I'm still human even when I pray, I talked about God being faithful to us in slavery, and I just starting to get this tinge in my heart that every single time we talk about black history, we default to slavery, even when we don't mean to. And as much as we know the struggle is a big part of our lives, we also have to look at the joy and the grace and the positivity that has also marked black life and black heritage. And I think we need to spend more time, not to diminish those barriers that we've had to overcome, but to highlight more in balance the joys of being black, the black experience, black creativity, all right? And so I'm so glad that Leah is talking about that, because it is a form of resistance. It is a form of pushing back against all that has been brought to us to pull us down. And so I'm excited about what she's going to share. So without further ado, would you welcome, with a warm Second Baptist welcome, our very own Miss Leah Dotson.
All right, so no need to even go any further than that, because he did a phenomenal intro, so we just gonna hop right on in there. So, the power of radical joy, the intellectual and cultural impact of the Harlem Renaissance. So these are just some pictures from the Harlem Renaissance, and we're gonna get into all of that, but I'm fascinated with the Harlem Renaissance for a number of reasons, but we'll get into all that, but these were just some pictures just to start us off. So, as Pastor Todd alluded to, so we're not doing slave ships tonight. We ain't singing no sad songs. We're going to say we black and we proud, because that is what we're going to talk about. Unfortunately, in order for us to get there, we do have to kind of go back some. And you know, when Pastor Todd was talking and when I was thinking through the presentation, I was like, I really want it to be joyful. I want us to talk about black joy. But then I was like, it is crazy that you can almost not, it's almost impossible to think about a time of our collective history in this country without there being some instance of some type of oppression. And that's terrible. However, how we get over it and how we overcome it is what we want to talk about tonight. So, what led up to the Harlem Renaissance, right? So, in order to talk about the Harlem Renaissance, you got to talk about the Great Migration. So, the Great Migration is exactly the reason why all of us know we got a great auntie somewhere down south still, where we can all still talk about our family from down south, because during the Great Migration from 1916 to 1970, over 6 million black Americans moved from the rural South all the way up to the northern cities. So a lot of that was dealing with, let's just keep it real. The reality of them moving was because when slavery happened, the agricultural South was agricultural. That built the industrial North. So while the North seems like they wasn't complicit in slavery, they benefited from it, because all of that cheap slave labor kept the cotton low, so they could buy it at a cheaper rate. So that left them a lot of money to develop things and research and development. So it spurred something like an industrial revolution, where the factories became more robust and they needed more workers. And because of the wars, they definitely needed more workers. So what happened during the Great Migration is they used to send recruiters down south to try and get people to come up north to work in the factories. But that really wasn't the reason why so many decided to come. It was really because of the violence that was down south. It was the racial violence. So it was a response to Jim Crow, but in particular, the lynchings. These laws were, of course, like, you know, it was terrible. But I brought up Ida B. Wells first. So anybody know who Ida B. Wells is? So Ida B. Wells she was a phenomenal woman. She probably should be known as much as Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and anybody else. She's not, though. Ida B. Wells almost single-handedly put a curve in the lynchings that were happening down south, and also she was the catalyst between the laws changing with racial violence and the KKK down south. What happened is that one of her friends was lynched, and she took it personal. She went on a one-woman wrecking crew to basically push and push and push until people paid attention to lynching. Her words were so powerful. She hustled so hard in order to get her words out in every magazine that she could get it out to. That is what really sparked the collective consciousness of people outside of the South of how bad the lynching was down south. Frederick Douglass wrote about Ida B. Wells. He said, "Brave woman, you have done your people and mine a service which can neither be weighed nor measured. American moral sensibility were not hardened by the persistent infliction of outrage and crime against colored people. A scream of horror, shame, and indignation would rise to heaven wherever your pamphlet shall be read." So she was prolific in her writing. She was unapologetic. She took on, she had death threats. She was a very courageous woman. I don't know if you guys have ever been to the lynching museum in Alabama. Oh, I hated it. It was the opposite for me. It was not empowering for me. It felt like a ode to the KKK. I mean, it almost felt like the Victor's Museum, because it was that, I just had no idea lynching was that bad down south. It was acres, and I'm not lying when I say acres. It was acres, and in these acres were these big monolithic metal beams, and they were probably about from here to here, each one of them. It had to be thousands of them, and there were names this big across them, filled with people who had been lynched down south. So that's how bad lynching was. So to think about that scale of the lynchings down south, and then think about Ida B. Wells' work. So this is what they were escaping down south. Throughout the presentation, I'm gonna give y'all some suggestions on some books to read. I was gonna bring this book, but I didn't, because we are trying to talk about joy, and this book is the opposite of joy. It's called, so y'all must know this book. It's called Without Sanctuary. This book is a book full of the pictures of the lynchings and the postcards, because they were postcards. They made postcards out of lynchings. So this is actually a postcard. What's on here, that's a postcard of one of the lynchings that took place. And this is the real reason why they don't want CRT, because they're scared that I think we might see some of their fathers in these pictures. So look down here, those are boys. Those are little boys in those pictures. It was a main event, so to speak. The lynchings. It was a celebration, so to speak, in the South when they lynched black bodies. So we're gonna tell our story, no matter if nobody tells it.
There's a picture with Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, as a child.
At a lynching, yes. I remember that was like a big thing, and he was like, "Well, my dad brought me, it wasn't me." But Jerry Jones was kind of like notoriously racist, so it all makes sense. So yeah, that's really the real reason. But this is what they were escaping. The migration started around 1916. It was basically a response to these conditions. But once they got north, it's not like they escaped, hardships, because of things like redlining. They pushed all the blacks into one area. But what they meant for our destruction, God meant for our good. So they moved into hubs like it definitely wasn't Cincinnati, Chicago, Detroit, and Harlem. For whatever reason, these cities were like black hubs. But Harlem in particular, and I don't know why Harlem, I really haven't been able to find out why Harlem or why New York, because it really wasn't Harlem, it was New York. And when they got there, they was like, "Oh no, y'all black people got to go to the ghetto." And so we made the ghetto our own. So we turned Harlem into our own little Mecca, right? So Harlem's black population skyrocketed, creating a unique space where black artists, writers, and intellectuals could thrive. The amount of black businesses, newspapers, like the Crisis and the Opportunity, theaters and social clubs. It was the rise and innovation of jazz music. So it was really three components to the Harlem Renaissance. The rise and innovation of jazz music, literary and intellectual awakening, and art and theater representation. So we're gonna talk about those three pillars of the Harlem Renaissance. So first I want to talk about the rise of black intellectualism. So you can't talk about the Harlem Renaissance without talking about this man right here. His name is Alain Locke. So Alain Locke coined this kind of phrase and it caught hold. It was called the New Negro Movement of Racial Identity. And it was coined by Alain Locke in 1925. And this concept encouraged black Americans to embrace pride, self-expression, and political activism. So it was at a point where in the Harlem Renaissance, a lot of people thought that in the collective thought, this was kind of a new thought. It's something that's not new to us now to say, you know, we African American. That was not a thought back then. We didn't say we were African American. So that whole concept of being, oh, thank you. That whole concept of being African American was something kind of new. So Locke, he graduated from philosophy from Harvard in 1907. He was the first Black Rhodes Scholar. He studied in Oxford, Berlin. He was kind of like the dean of the Harlem Renaissance. So if you know what a dean is in school, the dean deals with the students. They're the person that all the students go to. They deal with all the students. They give advice to the students. That's what a dean does in any kind of school that you go to, whether it be college, elementary, or high school. That's what a dean's job is. He was the dean of the Harlem Renaissance. He was brilliant. He was a brilliant man. He was very well respected because he was so brilliant and because he was so cultured. He knew all of the power players on the intellectual field and he was their mentor. So what he wanted them to do was, instead of using their talents and just trying to copy whiteness, like be the best, you know, black white person you could be, he encouraged them to abandon all of that and find inspiration from Africa and find inspiration in our own experiences here in America and create something new. So had it not been for that, we would have had a lot of, you know, black artists and black creativity where it would have just been emulating a lot of what's already white. So he pushed and pushed for us to abandon that and come back to our own culture. He also introduced this concept of cultural pluralism, and cultural pluralism is a common term that's used in sociology today. We know it as code switching. So everybody know what code switching is. Everybody does it probably every day on their job if they still go to work. So code switching is the art that black people know very well of. I can not act, but I know how to switch cultures in one area, and then when I'm with my people, I switch cultures again. So again, this idea of cultural pluralism, again, was not really something, I guess it was something that we knew, but it wasn't something that we named. And it was something that he said, encourage that, embrace that, be your natural self, right? So that's Alain Locke.
So he was totally different from Booker T. Washington.
Totally different, yes. And I'm glad you brought that up because when we get to W.E.B. Du Bois, that's when we'll talk a little bit about Booker, but he was. So Booker T. Washington was also an intellectual of the time, and Booker T. Washington pushed assimilation. He pushed, no, do not be black. Well, he didn't really say don't be black, but he basically was like, don't make no waves, go in there, work hard, you know, make yourself indispensable by doing the stuff that white people don't want to do. Or, you know, build your own businesses and have them come to you. Not businesses like big businesses, but like vocational businesses, agriculture. Make yourself invaluable to the economy so that white people can come to you, but don't make no waves, assimilate into American culture. People like Alain Locke and people like W.E.B. Du Bois abandoned that. They rejected that. They did not, they were the total opposite of that train of thought. So, this is bringing us to W.E.B. Du Bois. So I know we heard his name, and people hear his name a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean we know he was an important figure in African American history, but exactly why was W.E.B. Du Bois an important figure in African American history? W.E.B. Du Bois was basically the socio-political thought scholar of the time. So you know how some of us listen to what's Karen Hunter, or some of us listen to Joy Reid, or some of us listen to, you know what I mean? We listen to like the people who we trust to get, or Roland Martin. You know, the people who we kind of trust to give us kind of like African American socio-political thought. He was that for back in the 20s. That was hands down W.E.B. Du Bois. So he was not a spectator in the Harlem Renaissance. He was the driving force behind the intellectual and political, behind his political impact. So again, it definitely was not about art. It was also a book. I mean, it was also a movement around Black intellectualism. So he wrote a book called The Souls of Black Folk. The Souls of Black Folk, another staple that you might want to have in your library. The Souls of Black Folk was a collection of essays, and they were all socio-political essays of the time. And they were very eye-opening because unfortunately when you read those essays, it brings you a lot into what you see right now. There's a lot of what happened in the Souls of Black Folk that we can identify with right now. Like Pastor Pierre last week said, the miseducation of the Negro. We can read that right now, and it is 100% relevant to the times that we're dealing in now. I thought you might like to know, the last school that I was at the last school that I had a principal job, that was our required reading for my 10th graders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's why we need more Black people in education, because then we can kind of craft what they read. You know what I mean? But I digress. But The Souls of Black Folks. This was a collection. It was an anthology of a bunch of essays. But again, this is probably something that you should probably have in your library if you don't have it. So The Talented 10th. As you can see, I am wearing a Talented 10th shirt. So, that I love so much that my friend Tiffany bought me for my birthday because she knows me so well. So, The Talented 10th. This was a very controversial idea at the time. What W.E.B. Du Bois, his theory is that, and they misconstrued his theory on the Talented 10th. But the Talented 10th was a concept developed by W.E.B. Du Bois that said that he was, and again, he was going against Booker T. Washington at the time. And Booker T. Washington was like, man, leave all that education alone and just go ahead and go to trade school and get these trades together. So he felt strongly in the fact that he knew that everybody couldn't go to college. Everybody shouldn't go to college, and everybody wasn't going to go to college, the same way that we know now. But he was a proponent that said that when you go to college, if you go to college, you need to go to college and come back from college and do for your people. So if you go to college to be a nurse, you need to come back to Harlem, Chicago, somewhere where Black people are, and you need to be a nurse in your community. If you're going to be an engineer, you need to come back and do that for your community. If you're going for political science, you need to come back and uplift your community. And he felt that if that was the theory that he pushed on to the 10% of the people who would go to college, those 10% of the people would be the people that would be the leaders of uplifting the race. So that was his idea about the Talented 10th. He caught a little bit of flack from it from people like Marcus Garvey, because him and Marcus Garvey didn't get along either, and we'll talk about that. But he caught a little bit of flack from that from people like Marcus Garvey, and I love Marcus Garvey, but Marcus Garvey thought he was an elitist. And I don't think that's what he was really trying to be. I think he was being a realist in a way, but it was looked at like he was being an elitist. And to be honest, W.E.B. Du Bois was kind of an elitist at times. Like if you read some of his other writings, you was like, yeah, he was a little bit of an elitist at that time. However, I think there was some merit to that. And that's not just because I'm a college educated person that I would say proudly I'm the Talented 10th, but I kind of identify with that because I think we got so far off from Black excellence. For whatever reason, sometimes I question, like, why do y'all even care if your kids go to school and get straight A's? Because I don't know how many times I've seen, you know, the amount of almost disrespect from the community for college education, or, you know, once they, you know, this push to go get the straight A's, go get the A's, go get the A's, but there's not a lot of, I think the society that we live in, there's so much information. I think the value of saying that I've committed to study, I've committed to academia is kind of diminished because everybody think they could do it. And there's so information, everybody think they can get a college degree from YouTube. You know what I mean? So I think that there's something diminished in the idea of dedicating yourself to a study. Because, and I think that really needs to be talked about in our community, because we are complicit in giving ourselves some really, really, really bad information. I think I talked about it at your thing too. The amount of bad information I see from us is astounding, and you can't convince them otherwise. It's terrible. So I'm just being honest. So, and I don't think that you have to go to an institution for that, and I definitely don't think that you need to go, you know, you don't have to go to college for that. But you do have to dedicate yourself to a study if you call yourself trying to be an expert on it. Because nobody is going to want a YouTube doctor. No one's want, no, let you get sick. Nobody's going to YouTube to get their doctor. But when you talk about politics, people don't really want to listen to people who actually went and got a degree in political science. Or when you're talking about health, or when you're talking about some of these other little nuanced things, there are people among us who actually took the time to develop that study. And for whatever reason, in today's day and age, that there's this anti-intellectualism that's going on with black people right now. That's pretty concerning to me.
Would he have been a big proponent of public school? Like, get the whole classes educated?
I don't think he would have. No, because he was a big proponent of doing for yourself. He was a big proponent of let them teach their kids, and we gonna teach our kids. So I think maybe a public school. He wasn't a separatist as much as W.E.B. Du Bois, because W.E.B. Du Bois was a nationalist. He wanted to completely remove himself. But I don't think he really was. I don't think he would have been a big, humongous fan of like integration. That just doesn't seem like that was his thing. He was definitely a person of like, whatever they do, we just gonna do for us. Yes.
I think though the whole diminish of thinking is across the board because of what just happened with the election.
This is true.
You know, it's because he said I love the poorly educated.
He did. And
cheated you.
yeah, but it's scary sometimes how it's I think we advanced technology and we didn't advance the critical thinking that comes with it, because it's sometimes you got to think through what you're seeing. And like TikTok scares me with my son, because he would come to me and say the most outlandish things, and I'm like, where did you get that from? TikTok? I'm like, I was kind of happy when it went away, because maybe my son would come to me with crazy stuff, but he would get the craziest stuff off of TikTok, and I'm like, Marvis, that's not true, sir. Like, stay off of TikTok. So, but we can use it for our good. Has anybody ever heard of the Hillman University on TikTok? Hilltalk University.
No.
So Hilltalk University, which is why we are so innovative and brilliant. Hilltalk University, they said, okay, we got TikTok, we need to do something with it. So they got all of these professors from all of these different schools, and they do classes on TikTok. So you can like, I went to school and I'm in student loan debt right now because I went to school for Pan-African Studies and got my degree in Pan-African Studies, but a lot of the classes that they're teaching on TikTok, on Hillman Talk, are classes that I took in college, and they're taught by college professors. So you can go to Hilltalk, it's called Hilltalk, it was after Hillman. Like, what was that on? A Different World? So it was off of Hillman, but it's called Hilltalk University. And you can go on there and get all kind of classes taught by African-American college professors.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So Liberia. I got to talk about Liberia real quick before I talk about, is this show?
Yes.
Oh, well, maybe you need to come up here and talk about Liberia. So, because I'm just going to hit it a little bit. And you let me know if I'm right.
I'll keep you straight.
Okay, keep me straight. Okay, so a little bit about Liberia. So Liberia in 1816, the audacity of of the United States, but it is what it is. In 1816, a group of white Americans founded the American Colonization Society to deal with the problem of the growing number of free blacks in the United States by resettling them in Africa. So basically, after slavery, there was a group of white business owners, politicians. They got together and said, "What are we about to do with all these black people?" Because they ain't really what they say. They ain't really what they say. They ain't call us black people. But you got to think about it. In places like Mississippi, we outnumbered, and we still do. Still do. So in places like Mississippi, some parts of Louisiana, some parts of Alabama, we outnumbered the whites. So what they didn't want, and this is another thing that I almost talked about, was Reconstruction. We made insane gains. Like 20 years after slavery, we had people in the state house. We had people running for Congress. We made some serious gains, and people don't know that, like right after slavery, you know, some of us could already read, and we was like, oh, we free? We about to start demanding our rights. What they didn't want to do was start competing with black people. They didn't want to start competing with us for representation in no government. They didn't want to start competing with us for no jobs. And they really didn't want us to say, you know what, we about to do to y'all what y'all did to us. We outnumber y'all. So they were really kind of nervous about how many black people were in the South at the time. And it's like, we need to get them gone. So they went and basically colonized an area of Africa and claimed it for America and called it Liberia. Am I right so far? Yep. All right. They called it Liberia and start sending blacks over there. Start sending blacks to Liberia to live.
They actually conjugated the people and fought and killed the natives just to contain that country, just to get it going.
Yes. Yes.
It was a bloodbath. That's the story most people don't know.
And I didn't know that.
It was an actual conjugation of the people.
What do you mean conjugation?
They killed them.
Subjugation.
Yeah. So that's crazy. And I don't know if anybody can hear, I don't know if y'all heard him online, so I'm going to repeat it. So I knew about Liberia, that it was a colonized part of Africa. Like the audacity of the Americans to be like, you know what, we didn't use these Africans and we going to send them back now. And we're going to go over to Africa and take some land from some Africans that's already over there and then send our enslaved Africans back there. Like the audacity of that. But with this brother, what's your name?
Yeah, Ganter Nyanampe.
Okay, Ganter, he just said that because he's from Liberia, so for the people out there who didn't hear him, he said that what they actually did was they went over there and waged war with the people, the indigenous population who was already over there, and killed them just so they could send their own blacks back over there. Which is pretty wicked.
Which actually was a war against the native people that was on the ground. And the Amerigo-Liberian, we call them really. They came out there to have an actual like a revolutionary, let's come on the native, like they did to the Indians, like the American settlers did to the Indians. They actually did it to the natives over there with cannons. And in the war, the cannons to shoot, and the natives have spears and
and machetes they fight people with cannons.
Got cannons.
That's going to a gunfight with a knife.
Yeah. So they subjugated the whole people, conquered them, and took over the whole system.
It's called franchise.
Later on, they established one-party state, and the natives could not get part in it, and only those that came there would take part in that one-party state of government.
So that is a horrible story. And I would imagine there had to be some tension between the newly arrived blacks and the blacks that were already there. I imagine that was just a mess because that's the same thing that happened with like Rwanda. And I mean, I just imagine that was a mess. But I wanted to talk about Liberia before I talked about Marcus Garvey, because Marcus Garvey was heavily tied to Liberia. When Marcus Garvey started his UNIA, which is the United Negro Improvement Association, Marcus Garvey was a separatist. He was like, so not only was he like Malcolm X and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he was who they drew inspiration from. Malcolm X's dad was a Garveyite. So, you know, when they said that his dad was a preacher, he was a preacher, but he was a preacher under the UNIA. He was a Garveyite. So that's where Malcolm X got it. He got it honest because he had a father who was like, you know, we need to remove ourselves from this. Yeah, and his father got killed for preaching it. So Marcus Garvey, again, he wanted to separate completely, and he started the UNIA, and his whole thing was, well, they got Liberia, we need to move folks to Liberia. So that's when he started his Star Line and tried to get people to go to Liberia. He had 2 successful runs, but then he ran into some financial trouble. They accused him of fraud and took everything away from him. And here's the crazy part about it. I don't know if he was necessarily being nefarious, because I've read different things about Marcus Garvey. Some was like, he maybe been a little bit shady, but the things that I think I lean on the side of, I think a lot of times we're harder on our own people, so I don't know how shady he was, as opposed to he just didn't know what he didn't know. So that's the problem with, imagine had he hooked up with and not been so adversarial with a W.E.B. Du Bois, because you needed an accountant. Y'all needed each other. You know what I mean? So maybe if they would have worked together, maybe it would have been a little bit more successful. But in any case, Marcus Garvey, he was, his ideas of he pushed the idea, he like took the whole black, like this resurgence of like black pride and like kicked it up a notch. He was more interested in the African than what he even was in the America. Like W.E.B. Du Bois and like the Langston Hughes that we're gonna talk about, they were like, look, we built this land, we are not about to just give it up and pretend like we not from here. Marcus Garvey was like, bye, see you later. We are African and we need to go back to Africa. He really was one of the first people to push this idea of Pan-Africanism. So Africans, no matter where they are in the globe, we all need to unite and become as one. So that was Marcus Garvey. He influenced, like I said, Kwame Nkrumah, which was the president of Ghana, the first elected president of Ghana, who got rid of the British, kicked the British out, and he influenced people like Malcolm X. So, now that we got the backdrop out the way, fun stuff. So, the rise of the cultural explosion of African American literature and poetry. So, Langston Hughes. So, everybody know who Langston Hughes was. He's a very famous poet. So, I'm not going to go into the long diatribe about who Langston Hughes was, because we know who Langston Hughes was. But this was not my favorite poem of Langston Hughes. But when I read it, when I was looking for poems from Langston Hughes, I said, you got to be kidding me. What? So this poem is so crazy, how it's eerie how similar it is to what we're going through right now, all the way down to the tagline. So I'm not going to talk about Langston Hughes, but I'm going to read this poem. And the poem is called Let America Be America Again. So substitute America and put in great. So put great in there and just kind of think about that, because I'm telling you, when I read this, I said, what? But in any case, the poem kind of starts off with like, the idea is like some patriot, some real patriotic person just talking about how great America was and we need to make America great again. And you got Langston Hughes whispering on the side like America was never that anyway. So this is what Langston Hughes is called, Let America Be America Again. So I'm gonna read it like I feel like he read it. So this is like the kind of pompous patriot. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plains seeking a home where he himself is free. America was never America to me. That's him mumbling. Let America be the dream of the dreamers that the dreamers dreamed, and let it be that great strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scream, that any man can be crushed from above. It was never America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free and equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? Well, I am the poor white fooled and pushed apart. I'm the Negro bearing slavery scars. I'm the red man driven from the land. I'm the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I'm the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit and power and gain, and grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying your needs, of work the men, of take their pay, of owning everything for everyone's own greed. I'm the farmer, the bondsman to the soil. I'm the worker sold to the machine. I'm the Negro servant to you all. I'm the people humble, hungry, and mean. Hungry, yet today, despite the dream, beaten yet today, old pioneers, I'm the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. So free? Who said free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we dreamed and all the songs we sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be great again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be the land where every man is free. That land is mine, the poor man's, the Indian, the Negro, that's me. We made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose, the steel of freedom does not stain from those who live like leeches on people's lives, for we must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, say it plain, America was never America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangsters' death, out of rape and rot and rap and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, the endless plains, all that stretch these great green states and make America again. So don't that sound like today? Make America great again. Make America great again. And who got in trouble? Oh, Michelle Obama, when she was like, America was never great.
So what you're really saying is Pharaoh could be charged with plagiarism then.
Who?
That's why I call President Pharaoh.
Oh, he might could. But yeah, and I thought that was fun. I thought that was kind of telling because America, like the Patriots, and make America great again, make America great again. And you got people that's like, what America have you been living in? It has never been this ideal that y'all think or that y'all say it is. But he also said, like, I just thought it was a great poem. So that's Langston Hughes.
It's amazing how history repeats itself.
Ain't it?
Over and over and over again.
And I don't know if that's just we don't learn from it or if it's just inevitable. I don't know. But the mighty, mighty, mighty Zora Neale Hurston, I love her so much. She is my favorite. I would probably name my child if I had another one Zora. But Zora Neale Hurston, she was important in the Harlem Renaissance because unlike many of her peers who focused on politics and strife and things like that, she focused purely on Black joy and the way that Black people live. So she challenged stereotypes by portraying Black people as complex and joyful and independent rather than solely victims of racism. She was not just an author, she was actually an anthropologist. So probably I love her so much because that's what I wanted to be when I was little. Like, what little Black girl wants to be an anthropologist? But I swear when I was young, I wanted to be an anthropologist. I didn't know that's what it was called, but I just wanted to be Indiana Jones. I thought Indiana Jones was the coolest person ever, and I wanted to just go. I swear I wanted to be like Indiana Jones. I wanted to just go to different places and just watch people and dig up their artifacts and talk to people. I really wanted to be Indiana Jones, and he was an archaeologist. But archaeology, anthropology, kind of the same field, but she was that for Black people. So what she did was she went and studied down in Florida, where she was from, and she would just study and kind of be a fly on the wall. Even though that's where she was from, she did it from an academic perspective, and she wrote about it. And in her book, she used the same dialect that was used, and so she met with a lot of critique because people was like, you know, you kind of making fun of the way that the people talk, or, you know, we passed that way that you talk, you know, we don't have to speak broken English. And Zora Neale Hurston was like, it's not broken English, that's called a dialect, because she was an educated woman and she knew linguistics. So remember we talked about last year about how we kind of down ourselves when we talk about Ebonics and we talk about broken English, when reality that's just a dialect. So anywhere else it would be called a dialect, but we talk about it as being broken English. It's not broken English. It's a mix between West African and English. So it's not broken English. It's a merging of two different cultures, creating a whole new way of talking. And she knew that way back then. And so that's what she pushed, and she pushed that. And so she was, a lot of her anthropological studies and a lot of what she did actually set the stage for a lot of the theories that Pan-African studies uses today. So if it wasn't for her work and pushing that, we probably wouldn't, I mean, it would have took us longer, but she was a pioneer in that field. So she did a lot of Black folklore, spiritual traditions, oral history, because again, we talked about like the griot from Africa. Big Mama sitting and telling you the whole story of your whole family. That's not, that's purely African. That's what we come from. We didn't do a lot of writing down our history. We told everything orally. The signifying monkey and those stories, those are all African stories. So her most famous book was Their Eyes Are Watching God. Phenomenal book. If you don't want to read it, it's a movie. But Their Eyes Are Watching God is definitely her most famous book. But her last book, Barracoon, was the story of she went and found the last Black person to be shipped from Africa. He was still living during her time, and she wrote an autobiography about him and let him tell his life in Africa, because he was the last person kidnapped that we know of from the continent and brought over, and she did an autobiography for him.
That wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't. Yep. Zora Neale Hurston just passed not too, well,
1960.
something
1960.
Something like that. It wasn't too far along though.
1960.
Yeah. Muse and Men was another good book. I mean, I just love Zora Neale Hurston so much. So when I saw this, I was like, I just feel like that is really who she was, and she said it, so it probably was. But everything I've read about her, this just seemed like it was like quintessential to who she was. She said, sometimes I feel discriminated against, but it does not make me angry. It merely astonishes me. Because how can anyone deny themselves the pleasure of my company? It's beyond me. So that is who Zora Neale Hurston was, and she lived her life out loud. She was probably one of the first Black feminists. She was just an amazing woman. And if anybody knows me, they know this is my favorite quote. It is the quote that I live by. I got it tattooed the whole right side of my arm is this quote. But when lions have historians, hunters cease to be heroes. That's who, and anytime I do anything, I'm gonna sneak this quote in. But in any case, that's who Zora Neale Hurston was. She knew that if we don't tell our own story, we're gonna continue to be victims to somebody else telling our story for us. So only when lions have historians will hunters cease being heroes. So the rise of the cultural explosion of African, I missed the F, what? African American art. So Augusta Savage. Augusta Savage was a famous sculptor from during the Harlem Renaissance. So these are some, a couple, you can see the bust that she made. Augusta Savage kind of was prominent because she drew us as we were as African Americans. A lot of time we would either go right all the way back to Africa, or we would try to make it a little bit more European. She was really good at just saying, no, again, we have a whole new culture here, and this is what I want to represent. So the little girls with the braids, and you know what I mean, the pigtails, and you know, she did a lot of sculpting African American life. So she began making clay figures as a child, and I thought this was funny. But she made small animals, like she would like play in the dirt and like find clay and make clay. It was just in her to do. Her father was a minister, and she said she got licked about 4 times a week because her father said that he thought it was like some kind of devilish, you know, it's back in the day because of graven images. So he didn't want her making like clay figures, but she said she just couldn't help it. So she was a natural. So when she went ahead and graduated from high school, she went to a college called Cooper's Union in New York. That's how she got to New York. So she was actually, she didn't have enough money for school. She worked like Tiana on Princess and the Frog to try and pay her way through school. But she was so good at what she did that they ended up scholarshiping her through for the rest of her years that she was there. And she finished her bachelor's degree in 3 years instead of 4. So she was so good at what she did that the teaching staff took notice and they recommended that she do this fellowship in Paris. When she did the fellowship, I mean, they told her, I said, this is audacious. They told her that, yes, you were the best out of the bunch, but we're not picking you because you're black. So she went on a war path because she was like, how dare you not accept me even though I'm the best. So she fought them people for over a year, and she screamed from every place that she could scream in like an artist circles. She would just protest and protest and protest and protest, but she was not giving up. So because of her tenacity and her talent, she still didn't get in, but one of the board members from that fellowship that she wanted was like, you know what, just come work under me. Like, don't even do the fellowship, just come with me. So she made it to Paris anyway. And so she got to Paris, worked under this person, and when she went to Paris and worked under that person, she started getting like world-renowned fame. So Rome, Paris, America. So this is how she kind of got to be very well known. So after she did her world travels and came back and learned all of that, she actually married another Garveyite. See how all this stuff works in? But Robert Lincoln was her husband, and he was a Garveyite. He was a part of Marcus Garvey's like kind of inner circle. And then, but he passed away unfortunately, but she opened up a studio in Harlem, and in that studio, that's where she taught. Like she just wanted to teach other artists, and one of her students was Jacob Lawrence. Now I don't know if y'all know who Jacob Lawrence is, but Jacob Lawrence is probably one of the most famous artists, probably African American artists of all time, but definitely of the Harlem Renaissance. But Jacob Lawrence was actually one of her students.
And she did that in 1962.
Yes, she lived quite a long while, yes. So it's called Lift Every Voice. Yeah, and she didn't, because this sculpture right here was based off of James Weldon Johnson's Black National Anthem. It's called Lift Every Voice. So I thought this was interesting too. So this one, and I don't know how this is, so this one right here is her work. It's just a maternal sculpture of a mother and a child. The ones on the other side are Shona figures. So I'm not sure, and Shona is Zimbabwe. It's a ethnic group in Zimbabwe, the Shona people. So I'm not sure if she was inspired by the Shona people, or if that is just something, because again, the Harlem Renaissance was all about changing your aesthetic and being proud of the fact that you're African and American, and kind of incorporating that into its own thing. So I just thought that this reminded me so much of Shona art, because Shona art, there's a lot of maternity statues and Shona figures. Y'all probably seen that black one. That's they remake that all. You probably go to TJ Maxx and see it. It's in your living room. So they remake them in China, but it's based off of a Shona aesthetic. That's definitely a Shona aesthetic from Zimbabwe. So that rounded maternal kind of thing, that's from Zimbabwe usually. But you can find that type of aesthetic everywhere, but that's from us. But I didn't know if that was her or if she was influenced by that. So I put some Shona pieces on there so that you could see the similarities, because I thought that was cool. James Vandersea. So James Vandersea was a classically trained violinist. He was very gifted in music, and he kind of traveled the world with music. But he moved to Harlem right at the height of like when people were moving to Harlem. And I'm not sure how he got in. Oh, his sister was into photography, and so he was like, well, let me try that too. So he got into photography with his sister, and they opened up a portrait studio. Didn't know that he had a knack for it, but boy, did he have a knack for it. So James Vandersea became the it guy for anybody in Harlem if they had any if you wanted to be anybody, or if you want to floss and be like, you know, my wedding pictures is done by James Vandersea. It was like a status symbol to have your picture taken by James Vandersea, because he was that well thought of in Harlem as the it person for photography. And he didn't know it at the time, but he was capturing such icon. And this is why he's famous, because he's just thinking, oh, I'm just making money because these people want to give me their money to take their pictures. But he didn't know that he was capturing a time period. So the pictures that he took became so iconic, we now look back at his pictures like, man, did he capture Harlem? So,
He didn't even realize.
and he ain't even realized what he was doing. So, yeah, so these,
Where did his name
I don't know, and I don't know. He does have a very unusual name, so I'm not sure what he's.
South African?
I have no clue what James Van. Yeah, it does sound South African. So I'm not sure where he hails from, where his people, but Vandersea is a very unusual
He
name for
just
sure.
died in 1983.
Yes, because he has some more recent pictures too. So he did a So this, I'm probably sure that y'all saw that before. That's a very iconic picture, and that is like quintessential Harlem, honey. So Harlem had a lot of, and this is why I love the Harlem Renaissance, because there was such a air of black excellence, of black joy. All of these people were not rich, but you gonna see it. So it's not like the kind of luxury line that we do now. I don't think it was like that luxury line where everybody wanna pretend like they something. I think it was honestly something that was like, we embody making sure that we present well. It was just part of the culture. So they could have worked 40 hours a week and been tired, but come Friday, they're gonna step out like they just got paid Friday night. So, but also in Harlem, again, we had a lot of wealth in Harlem. Harlem was the place for the black middle class. If the black middle class was a huge, we had a large black middle class population. Everybody was not poor. As you can see, these people were all college educated back in the 1900s, 1919, 1920, 1908, going to Harvard, going to Howard, you know what I mean? All of the social clubs flourished during this time. So when you hear about the D9, like the Deltas, AKAs, Kappas, like all of those sororities and fraternities, that exploded during this time. It was like a cultural awakening of, we can be excellent, right? So this is James Vandersea's portrait. This is somebody who was like, I want you to take a picture of my baby boy. But it was just, his pictures are just so iconic. So this is a picture of a little girl's dance studio. So they were at dance practice. A family portrait. Just look at just the regality of it. You know what I mean? I just love his pictures. Those generations, just a generation of women. The social club, this was called the United Athletic Social Club. These pictures, these are the ones that they just became iconic. Like, he didn't know it at the time, but when you look back, you're looking back at history. So look at how they were dressed and, the wedding pictures. Like, these pictures just became iconic Harlem.
They were styling and profiling.
They were. Yes, they were. Yes, they were. The other thing about James Vandersea, which was very funny to me, James Vandersea is credited with, he had a family member who passed away. Like, if you look at this, like, if you see this, I'm gonna come around so I can point it out. If you see this right here, see how like those cherubs are in the back and the lilies and all of that? He had a family member who passed away, and he did the program at the funeral, and he put like the clouds and the lilies, and it became so popular because people really weren't doing that, and they credited him for the way that we do our programs now. Wings on everybody. But before that, they weren't really doing that, and because he started doing it, people started going to him and saying, you know what, I want our program to look like that. Somebody else passed, they want their program, then he doing other people's program. But they credit James Vandersea for like kind of filtering in that kind of aesthetic of the kind of programs that we see today, which I thought was funny. So, okay. So this is remember I said that one of oh man, I'm having a brain. Yes, one of her why am I not thinking about it? But her Jacob Lawrence. How did I forget that? So one of her students was Jacob Lawrence. These are Jacob Lawrence paintings.
That's right.
Yes. So these are Jacob Lawrence paintings, and they look familiar. They probably look a little bit familiar, right? So these are Jacob Lawrence paintings. Jacob Lawrence, he was an abstract artist, and he was just very renowned for his time. If you look, I put these two up here because I want you to see like the difference in both of these. There's subtle differences, but they're differences, and this is going to come into play a little bit later. So both of these were James Weldon Johnson's portraits, and they both depict life, right? But to see the subtle differences in the colors. So the colors on this one, the red's a little bit more muted, the green's a little bit more muted, the background's not as vibrant. So what does that kind of depict to you guys? What do you think that's kind of?
Doom and gloom.
Maybe doom and gloom. What else? What does that kind of make you feel?
Depressed?
I mean, it might make you feel depressed. To me, it's just like the doldrums of life. It's just going to work. Nothing.
Work.
Yeah, it's just like work. It feels like they're going to work. It feels like everybody is going to work. It's just another day at work. If you look to the right,
Party time.
it looks a lot, but it's just vibrant. You know what I mean? This is them at home. Maybe this was the weekend. You know, or Sunday. You know, the red is redder, the blues are bluer. You know what I mean? Those are very intentional, and that's what this is. And the reason why I brought this up is because in abstract art, people, you know, when you see abstract art, you're like, why is that famous? Like, I could get, why? I could draw that. How are these people famous for that? But that's because abstract art, you have to feel it in some way. You look at it and you try to figure out what the person is saying with the colors, with the movement, with the shapes. I remember a person told me, an old school brother said one day, and I never forget it. He said, as he got older, he said, this gonna happen to you, little sister. He said, as you get older, you're gonna listen to more and more jazz.
Yeah,
And he said, you wanna know why? He said, because I don't want people telling me, you know, how I should feel about what I hear. He said, I don't want to hear their lyrics. I want to hear the music, and I want to develop my own lyrics. I said, well, all right, brother. And it made so much sense. He said, you get tired
Has
of.
it happened yet to you?
I always love jazz anyway, so right. It's I love hip hop. I ain't there yet because I would go to a hip hop concert in a heartbeat. But yeah, but I get it. But he said I don't want to hear other people's interpretations of their life. I want to hear the music and let it move me myself. So I was like, wow, that was insightful. So, but that's how abstract art is. They don't tell you what it is. Like with Augusta or Savage, it's like we look at it and we know what you was feeling. You know what I mean?
That's like the picture on the left is the weak, and then the picture on the right is the weak end.
See, yes,
Right.
it very well could be because those little substances. That's not the camera. That's he did that on purpose, right? So he talked about work. These are just some pictures where he was depicting work. Lines, angles, everything means something in abstract art. Love and family. So they was having card parties back then.
You cheated me.
So,
Yeah.
see? So remember that episode of The Cosby Show? When I first started looking at Jacob Lawrence's work, I was like, dang, that looked familiar. And it looked familiar because remember that episode of The Cosby Show when he went to the auction and he was trying to get that Jacob Lawrence portrait? That's a Jacob Lawrence portrait. So, and one thing about The Cosby Show, like, Bill Cosby a little odd, a little weird. I don't fool with Bill Cosby too much no more. But The Cosby Show, I don't think we knew what we had when we had it. The Cosby Show was such a phenomenal show. But
That hung in their living room.
it hung in their living room, yeah. So if you watch The Cosby Show all the time, you didn't see The Cosby Show without seeing that picture because that was right at the bottom of the stairs when they ran up the stairs. So that was a Jacob Lawrence portrait. And Jacob Lawrence was notorious for showing African American life and showing the joys of African American life and showing the abstract portions of African American life.
If I'm not mistaken, in that particular episode, when they was trying to get that picture, the author was related to Mrs. Cosby, I believe.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Mrs. Huxtable, rather.
But I know he wanted that picture, and he did everything he could do to get that picture, and he ended up getting it. So yeah. So there's a lot of history, and I mean, the Cosby Show was just a phenomenal show. Bill Cosby, the jury's out on him as a person, but that show was good. So more Jacob Lawrence is just, so this one right here, that one, I don't know. Like, I was talking to my daughter about it because she loved art too. And I was like, you know, when we were talking about it, and she was like, it makes me sad and da-da-da-da-da-da, because blue automatically like turn people sad. Or to me, I don't know. To me, it felt, I don't know what y'all think about it. This one on the blue.
They don't look like people to me.
Yeah, they do. They definitely look like people.
No, they don't.
Oh, they don't look like people. What are you seeing?
An animal or something.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not. I'm serious.
No, yeah, and that's the beauty of it. That is the beauty of it. Anybody else see anything else?
Maybe it's
Like they kneeling down.
Yeah,
Kneeling down with the arms.
I kind of felt that.
Over, they look hunched.
Yeah, like kneeling down, kneeling over.
Mm-hmm. So when I was talking to my daughter, she was like, you know, I think they're sad and they feel sad, and I was like, I don't know, I feel
So
calm.
like if they're blending in with the nature, you know, like the
Maybe.
blue and the greens and all that, like they're blending right in with the
I feel like I see both.
environment.
I feel like I see two words that came to mind when I looked at it was burden and prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Or meditation, you know,
Rest.
some sort of,
Yeah,
some
That-
sort of surrender or prayer.
Like they're in the desert somewhere.
I kind of got that too. I got that. To me, I just felt like they was just like, we just gonna let whatever wash over us, and we almost transported right now. So you know, like you so deep into prayer or meditation that it's just like the calm is just washing over them. That's kind of what I felt when I seen it. But my daughter, it made her sad.
I got rest out of the shape.
Rest?
Blue.
Out of the shape. So a little bit more about the shape, and there's a reason why I'm telling y'all this. A little bit more about the shape. Like what about the shape?
It's rest.
The bended line,
Round.
the round kind of evokes a different. Now, what if it was sharp angles? Like if it was sharp,
I'm still trying to figure out what that one
Feels
is.
aggressive if it was like sharp.
feels more aggressive. Yeah, angry. I don't know what that is. I have no clue. I think there's some heads in there somewhere.
The eyes.
I see a couple eyes. I don't know exactly what's going on in this picture. I cannot lie. I don't know. But the reason why I had y'all kind of go through this because y'all ain't know y'all was coming to whatever. What is it? Wait, what y'all got? Y'all got y'all water or whatever. Y'all ain't know y'all was coming to a painting set. Y'all
Wait a minute.
However, y'all coming to a painting set. It's an interactive class. Here you go. So, the reason why I had y'all kind of think through that is because I kind of want y'all, for the last portion, we're going to do two things. We're going to make y'all own kind of idea of what it means to y'all, the Harlem Renaissance means to y'all. And before I get to the music part of the Harlem Renaissance, where we talk about some of the musical influences, I want y'all to have these because as you're listening to the music, what better way to really internalize what we talked about than to try it yourselves? So, these are paint pens. You might have to scoot down a little bit, sister. So I'm gonna put some right here so y'all can use them. I'm gonna put some down here so y'all can use them. Everybody got chairs.
I want my own.
Sit down in a chair. So, we did this at our Martin Luther King event with our kids. So we did this with our kids at Martin Luther King event. And at the Martin Luther King event, we played like Malcolm X and we played excerpts of Martin Luther King. We played like Fight the Power music. And then we played like some videos of like what they saw, like kids get sprayed with water hoses, and we played joyous things. We played all kind of different things for the kids, and we had them do this activity. So I'm gonna do it with you all. So while we are listening to some of the greats from the Harlem Renaissance, some of the great musical influences, and I'll let you know who they are as we're talking, I want you to kind of hear, again, some considerations as you're listening. How is the music, because this is the other thing about abstract art. Now, a lot of times it was sometimes drugs, but a lot of times they have to have something that's their muse, right? So when they hear things, or that like when they're hearing things or when they see things, that's their muse in order to create art. And a lot of times it was music. A lot of times, like I said, it was drugs too, but a lot of times it was music that heightened their, I mean, it was, some of the best artists like Basquiat was a stone cold drug addict, but I mean, he was an amazing artist. But how does it make you feel when you're listening to it? So these are some considerations I want you to think about while you're listening to it and while you're painting, while you're listening to it. And those are paint pens, they're not markers, so be careful. How does it make you feel? If that feeling was a color, what would that color be? Nouns do not have to look literal. So person, place, things, anything that's a noun, you do not have to be a trained artist in order to do it. Nouns don't have to be literal, so it can be very much not literal. If you feel like this is about love or about people, draw just a head to represent a person, or arms to represent a person. They don't have to be literal. Or if something puts you in the mind of a schoolhouse, put a school, just some shapes that remind you of a schoolhouse. Shapes represent emotion. Circles can represent happiness, joy, unity, friendship. Squares and rectangles and triangles, because they're so angular, a lot of times they represent fear, confusion, sometimes strength, because squares are like strong. They're like impenetrable sometimes. So sometimes that can feel like strength, or professionalism because they're so practical and angular. Ovals can sometimes represent sadness. It's just however you think about it. Rounded shapes, like Pastor Todd said, he felt like meditation. Those people were like bent over in meditation because it was like a rounded shape. Sharp angles, like may convey a sense of urgency. Hearts, of course, are love. So think about stuff like that when we're on this next part, because we're gonna listen to the music. So these were some of the notable people in the Harlem Renaissance as far as music goes. So this is Bessie Smith. Anybody ever heard of Bessie Smith? Okay, well, then we're gonna play a little bit of Bessie Smith for y'all to paint to. So let's play a little bit of Bessie Smith. Bessie Smith was a blues singer. So, you know, everybody in Harlem Renaissance wasn't a blues singer. Like her and Ma Rainey sang together a lot of times. But Ma Rainey was so far back, her audio was hard to hear. So I just went with Bessie Smith.
Are you going to switch them up so that in the middle
Yep.
of the picture I got to change mood?
Yep.
When it rains 5 days and the sky turns dark as night. When it rains 5 days and the sky turns dark.
Oh, okay.
Snoop Dogg, that'll be your dog.
pressing it and pumping it to come out.
And thousands of people ain't got no place to go. And I waited till the phone somehow was over.
Let me go help get some.
And I waited till the phone somehow was over. Then look down on my house where I used to live. Backwater blues done caused me to pack my things and go. Backwater blues done caused me to pack my things and go. Oh, my house fell down and I
Bessie gonna get y'all the prime y'all can't get.
Right.
Bessie gonna get y'all the prime here.
I can't move.
Bessie get y'all the prime here.
I can't move.
This sound like back in the 50s, maybe 55 somewhere.
There ain't no place
Yeah,
to
but
go.
when I was little,
Oh.
yeah, about 10, 12 years old, you know, somewhere there.
Okay, that was Bessie Smith.
Yeah.
Are they coming out? Okay. Well, in the interest of time, I'm gonna go ahead and play Duke Ellington. See, those would be like sharp angles. That trumpet.
Hurry, hurry, take the train to get to Sugar Hill, way up in Harlem. If you should take a train, you get to where you're going in a hurry. Hurry, 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 now it's coming. When you get to hurry, if you should miss the train, you're the quickest way to get to Harlem.
And the instrumentation. Back then, there was whole bands and orchestras. Not even bands. These people played with orchestras. This was called the Duke Ellington Orchestra. Yeah. Oh yeah, she's amazing. Yeah. Yeah, she is. Samara Joy is amazing. I don't like smooth jazz too much, but I love like Coltrane, and I like that type of jazz. All right. Well, that was Duke. In the interest of time, because he'll play all day. So we'll go ahead on with. All right.
Oh,
Just over.
Oh, Billie Holiday.
I'm playing this one.
I am playing this one because I wanted to go from that exuberance of Duke Ellington to now we're gonna bring it into Billie Holiday. And how do you feel when you hear Billie Holiday sing "Strange Fruit"? Because the only person who ever sing it, even near Billie, is of course who?
The one who's in the movie.
Oh, Nina Simone.
No, not her. The one who's in the movie.
Donna Ross.
Donna Ross. I ain't never heard Donna Ross sing "Strange Fruit."
She played Billie Holiday.
Oh,
She
The
did
movie.
Billie-
The movie. Did she?
I didn't see the Billie Holiday movie.
You didn't? Okay, it's what's that girl?
Lady Sings the
Anya
Blues.
Day.
Billie Day.
Oh, Andra Day.
Andrew Day.
Oh, Andra Day. Yeah, I'm a fan of Nina Simone's version. It was just haunting. But Billie Holiday's voice is amazing.
And now a tune written especially for me. Strange Fruit. Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh. Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rock, for the tree to drop. Here is a strange
My kids look like
and
bats.
bitter
Like bats flying.
We're gonna jump to Louis. Louis Armstrong.
Hello, darling.
This is
This
the
is
last
Louis, darling. It's so nice to have you back where you belong. You looking swell, darling. I can tell, darling. You still grow
want to play an excerpt of it, just because you can't like not talk about Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson was just who he was as a person. Yeah. They say his voice was so authentically baritone. They say he could bring down thunder.
Press so hard they could not stand. Let my people go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old
Okay, so, ooh.
Paul said, don't cut him off.
I know, Paul, it's hard to cut Paul off, but I didn't go through any other artists because their artistry speaks for itself, but most people don't really understand who Paul Robeson was. Paul Robeson was really like a Renaissance man unto himself. He was a football player, got a football scholarship, went to Rutgers on a football scholarship, academic scholarship, but this man spoke 20 different languages. 7 of them fluent. He was fluent in German, French, Spanish, Russian, and Swahili. And he also was conversational in Chinese, Hebrew, Yiddish, Italian, Yoruba, Zulu, and other various African and Eastern European languages. I think he was like some type of savant because he was brilliant. And the thing that made him where we probably should know him is he did not play about his people. He went on protests, if not only just protests just to be treated fairly, but he was a big proponent of almost socialism to a degree, where he felt that, you know, he was kind of like anti-government, like he was against the oppression of people, period. And he dedicated his talent, his wealth. They barred him from playing certain places. He had to go overseas. They took away his passport. They really ostracized him. He lived a long time too. Like he lived all the way up through McCarthyism, and they accused him of being like a communist. So they tried to persecute him, and none of it really worked. But yeah, so he lived through McCarthyism. They accused him of being a communist. I mean, he went through some stuff, and he was dead set on, I will not play, I will not do anything in places that he feels were oppressive to other people. He even said one time he was so smooth because he knew his talent was so well sought after that he even said he would turn down roles and things because he said that don't reflect the culture of my people, so I'm not doing it. So he was an amazing figure, and I would go more into him if I had time, but he was definitely an amazing figure. Paul Robeson was an amazing figure, not just for the Harlem Renaissance, but for African American history, period. So that is the Harlem Renaissance in an hour and a half. If we have any questions, I'll be happy to answer from another day. Catch me at church. But I want to leave with the Harlem Renaissance was the first time in African American history where we kind of coined that phrase of being African American. So we was Negro, we was colored, we was the hard R, we was a lot of stuff, and they still didn't think of themselves as African American, but they really defined for themselves to say that we are going to embrace our African culture, and we are not just gonna say we're gonna lead this country up because, you know, and some of us are saying that now where it's just like we ready to go, just let me go to Ghana somewhere. But the reality, and I feel it, I feel it so, and I feel it in my bones, I feel it. But at the same time, we had ancestors who died and worked, enslaved for this country. So this country is no less ours than it is anybody else's. And they came from a space and they pushed the space to say, we are not going to build up anything else. They owe us this. And we are going to create our own here. And we are going to create our own, and we're going to be proud of it. And this is the cultural revolution that was the Harlem Renaissance. So that's it. Welcome.
Don't forget President Biden pardoned Marcus Garvey.
He did?
Marcus Garvey.
I didn't know President Biden pardoned Marcus Garvey posthumously. How do you say it? Posthumously?
Give him a pardon. He gave him
Oh.
a pardon.
I know he was convicted of fraud.
Yeah, he gave a pardon.
Oh, okay. I know President Biden did that. Oh, okay.
A matter of freedom.
Anybody want to show their thing? I'm about to walk around looking at it. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Harlem Renaissance portraits.
No.
That's what they're supposed to look like. They're supposed to be abstract.
No, it's not.
I love it.
Well, let's give Sister Leah a great big hand. Thank you so much. And as I said at the beginning, what a appropriate subject matter, and one that we don't hear enough about during Black History Month and celebrations of Black history and heritage are the joyous and creative sides of Black America. We often just think of a few performers or Hollywood stars, but the Harlem Renaissance and other movements that have emanated, which makes me think, to be controversial, about all of the hoopla over Beyonce doing a country album and people saying that she's not really country. For those that don't know it, Black people are as country can get. There would be no country music without Black folk. Black folk played banjos first. Okay? And it's funny because the kora, which your daughter played in church, we did one of our Black History Days about the kora and about the many instrumentations and the broadness. Black people are more than jazz and hip hop and the blues. All of those things, the other rock and roll, okay, country, bluegrass, all that, it comes from the Black experience. What's that?
Even rock and roll.
Rock and roll, absolutely. And so it's important for us to focus on these sides, and because when we do teach our history, we cannot just always teach pain and terror and sadness and desperation. We experienced joy. There was I didn't participate, but I probably should have. My cousins were doing it when they were doing these videos of themselves online, and it was Black men frolicking and rolling around in the grass. And it was just grown Black men running through meadows and stuff and just being lighthearted and silly, because we, by way of the hardness of this life, put on this hard demeanor, but we have to learn how to soften ourselves up around each other, and when we can, around the rest of the world, to show that we're not just a bunch of militants always fists in the sky, and that there's more than one way to fight against the oppression and the false images of who we are as a people. And that's by being something different. And so I appreciate you sharing that. To those of you who wish you had come and painted, sorry, I didn't know she was going to have you painting either. But what a great way of capping off the evening. And so we're so grateful for you, Leah, for sharing that with us. And we want to continue in that vein. I don't know if you know our subject matter for next week, Pastor Pierre. Do we know what we're touching on? Is Leah back again?
Yes.
Somebody's back again. And we'll have our next subject matter pushing for next week. I do want to reiterate the announcement I made at the very beginning, and that is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. at the Veterans Service Commission, the Veterans Administration building on East Market Street. There will be a panel of Black military veterans speaking. I stopped in, I slipped out to go check them out tonight and came back. Brother Herb Caldwell, one of my former ministers, George Brizard, Reverend George Brizard, and Kim Johnson, our own sister Laura Bob Miller was there speaking. And tomorrow night there'll be a fresh panel, and this is hosted by the Warren Heritage Center, the Veterans Services Commission. Pastor Garrick Matlock is spearheading this discussion, so you know it's going to be live. And so I want to encourage all of you, if you don't have anything to do, to stop down there and participate in that. I already shared it on my Facebook page, and get down there and support that. And then come back next Monday for another great class. Amen? Amen. Amen. As always, we are Black History, and Black History is ever evolving, and there are always more things to discover. And so we thank you again for tuning in. We're going to dismiss with prayer. Please grab some sandwiches and chips to take home to your families. As I always say, Grandma would say, you're going to want that sandwich later. So get it now so you don't get hungry later. And let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Father, we thank you, we honor you, we bless you, and we lift you up for this time of learning another facet of our Black heritage through the Harlem Renaissance and the resistance through joy, the resistance through creativity, the resistance through storytelling and music making and artistry. Thank you for giving us the gift of creativity as our creator, so we who are made in your image are also made to create. And what beautiful works, what beautiful impacts, what beautiful accomplishments have been made by the hands, by the voices, by the minds, by the bodies, by the hearts of Black folk and the Black soul. And for this we thank you. The world is so much richer because men and women of color have added to the tapestry of this world and of this nation. We thank you for Leah and her diligent work in sharing such in-depth research and reminding us that we are way more than civil rights and slavery. We are way more than hardship and pain. We are a people of joy and of grace. Father, we ask for traveling mercies even over the icy roads tonight, that you would continue to keep our brothers and sisters wherever they may be safe, Lord, as we move forward through the week. We thank you and bless you for this time together and the time we will spend in the future. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. God bless you all.